The cruelest thing the writers ever did to George Cooper happened before the heart attack, when Mary finally said the one word he had spent years waiting to hear. Yes. Season 7, Episode 12. George tells Mary he is being offered a coaching job at Rice University, college football. The dream he had before Sheldon became a Nobel Prize winner, before Georgie became a father, before every family crisis somehow landed on George's shoulders. Mary looks at him and says, "You should take it." George asks, "You sure?" That question is the wound. He is not asking whether Rice is a good job. He is asking whether he is finally allowed to want something. By the end of that same episode, the family is waiting to take a photograph. George is late. The door opens, but George does not walk through it. Principal Peterson and Coach Wilkins do. George suffered a heart attack at work. He never made it home. But that death scene started about 3 years earlier, at a Thanksgiving table where everybody got what they wanted except the man paying for most of it. Go back to Season 2, Episode 9, Family Dynamics and a Red Fiero. George comes home and says he may have a shot at a better job. Mary assumes he means head coach at Medford High. George says it is better. Special teams coach at the University of Tulsa. Mary's first response is not congratulations. It is, in Oklahoma? George jokes that this is where they are keeping Tulsa these days. Funny line, bad sign. Before George can decide, Mary starts building a case against the move. She warns Meemaw that leaving means barely seeing the grandchildren. Then she asks Meemaw to explain at Thanksgiving how heartbroken she would be. That is not a conversation. That is a campaign. Young Sheldon has no laugh track, but it still hides pain inside punchlines. So remove the jokes and watch the table. Mary praises their home, their neighborhood, Meemaw living across the street, and the children's school. Meemaw follows with a speech about being heartbroken if they move. Then George gets his turn. He says some opportunities come once in a lifetime and require believing in one another. Nobody believes in him. The argument explodes. The children are taken across the street. Thanksgiving ends with George alone inside the home, everyone just used as evidence against him. Sheldon sees the pattern. He tells Dr. Sturgis his parents' marriage is a zero-sum game. What is good for George is bad for Mary, and vice versa. That is the entire tragedy. There is a term for what happens to George after that night: role captivity. It is the feeling that you are trapped inside a role you are expected to perform while the rest of your identity disappears. George can be the provider, the father who drives Sheldon across Texas, the husband who absorbs the next emergency. But when he tries to become the college coach he always wanted to be, his dream becomes a threat to the family. So he buys a red Pontiac Fiero. Sheldon calls it a meaningless symbolic gesture. It is not meaningless. It is the cheaper version of escape. George cannot change his life, so he changes his car. That is role captivity with a steering wheel. George still drives to Oklahoma for the interview. For one moment, it looks like he might choose himself. He comes home. The family waits. I turned it down. Mary asks why. Missy immediately asks if he is afraid of Mom. That sounds like a Missy joke. It is also the truth nobody wants to touch. Then adult Sheldon admits that, as a child, he never understood the sacrifices his father made for the family's happiness. Young Sheldon celebrates because they are not moving. George loses the biggest opportunity of his career. His son reacts like the family just won. That is invisible sacrifice. The better you carry it, the less anyone notices you are carrying anything. Subscribe to Cooper Untold, because this family buried more inside casual jokes than most dramas put in death scenes. Now watch what happens after Tulsa. Season 5, Episode 13. George learns his coaching job is in danger because the team is losing. By Season 5, Episode 16, he is looking elsewhere. He tells Dale he tried for a coaching job at Sheldon's college, only to discover they do not even have a team. Then he says he is starting to think it will be the same garbage wherever he goes. That is role captivity turning into resignation. The man who once believed in a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity now expects every door to lead back to the same room. But the Big Bang Theory makes this even uglier. In Season 3, Episode 7, adult Sheldon reenacts one of his parents' fights and remembers George as the loud drunk screaming that he is drunk as hell. That is the version viewers carried for years, George the embarrassment. George the failure. George the man Sheldon escaped. Then The Big Bang Theory Season 12, Episode 10, The VCR Illumination, destroys that version. Adult Sheldon is crushed after a scientific failure. What pulls him out? A recording of George coaching. George tells his players that losing does not make them losers. Sheldon uses that speech to return to his work. The father he reduced to a warning story helps him move toward the Nobel Prize. George never coached college football, but decades later he coached a Nobel Prize winner through a television screen. And he never knew. Then Rice calls in Season 7. Same dream, different city. This time Mary says yes. Georgie and Mandy are out of the house. Sheldon is leaving for California. Missy is changing schools. The family can finally move without George being accused of tearing it apart. For the first time, the provider and the dreamer are allowed to be the same man. That is why George looks stunned when Mary supports him. Roll Captivity has one final cruelty. When you have been trapped long enough, an open door does not feel real. George starts planning Houston. Mary schedules the family portrait. George leaves for work and says, "See y'all later." Sheldon says nothing. Then George dies before Rice, before Houston, before the photograph, before the life he postponed could begin. Season 7, Episode 13, Funeral, shows Sheldon replaying that final morning. In one version, he says goodbye. In another, he tells George he loves him. In another, he asks for a ride. But adult Sheldon cuts through every fantasy. He did not say any of it. He admits he barely noticed his father leave. Then comes the real horror. So many times, he did not notice George at all. George was not perfect. He drank. He shouted. He resented. He failed. But he stayed. He turned down Tulsa. He kept the family in Medford. He drove Sheldon where he needed to go. He swallowed opportunities until the final one arrived too late. Then the boy who documented everything failed to record the cost. Go back to Season 2 and watch George say, "I turned it down." Do not watch Sheldon cheering. Watch George's face. He already knows nobody will remember what he gave up. Tell me when you finally noticed him, because George Cooper spent his whole life saying, "See y'all later," to a family that never understood. One day